The average household income earns about $80,000 after taxes. That leaves you about $4,000 a month. But did you realize the average pickup truck in North America these days costs around 60 grand? So if you break that down on a 5-year term, your annual or your monthly car note is going to cost you about $1,200. That's about 30% of your monthly income is going into that vehicle. And we're not even talking about gas and insurance. It's no wonder that we hear of so many people getting repossessed. They can't afford to make their payments because of these high prices. A lot of these vehicle prices are going through the roof, and those are average vehicles. Once were ever attainable by just about everybody. Not only that, they say only about 15 to 18% of the population has enough money, $1,000 emergency fund in their bank account. That's right, most people don't even have enough to cover some unexpected cost. You know, a problem with, say, a hot water tank at home, or a furnace, or a problem, a medical condition, or maybe even a set of tires that they need to replace for their vehicle. Things are tough, and a lot of it is the cost of living, but vehicles are exclusively expensive these days. But you know what? I'm sitting right now in a truck, and if you need to buy yourself something affordable, say, for example, $1,000. $1,000 is all you have for a budget. What are you going to buy? Well, I'm sitting in such a vehicle. Now, I've been scouring the classifieds and I've been looking all over the place, and I want to express the type of vehicle you can get and why you would buy such a vehicle as opposed to spending over a third of your income on a car vehicle payment. I mean, a vehicle, truck, car, SUV, it doesn't matter with all the new technology. We've heard from the likes of Tim Kuniskis say that there's no margins left. They can't drop prices any further. Why is that? Not sure, but either way, they claim that they're at the bottom of their costing. They can't afford to drop prices anymore. So where does that leave consumers like us? Well, I mean, I've been shopping for trucks for some time, but I keep coming around to the fact that I'm going to be spending, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 on a truck. And then I start thinking about how much that is and the percentage of my annual or my monthly income that goes into that vehicle. And I decide, no, I'm going to keep driving this old vehicle. And this vehicle is exactly what more and more people are doing. Even when you can afford to make the payments on your monthly on your new car or truck, a lot of people are finding that they're going negative equity. That's right, repossessions are up. A lot of it has to do with budgets and cost of living, but a lot of people are going to trade their vehicle in or 3 or 4 years after they've decided they're kind of done with that new vehicle and they want something else. The vast majority, and they're saying the average is about $7,000 or $8,000 of negative equity they have to carry forward and cover those costs. So not only do they trade in their vehicle that they just bought 2 or 3 years ago, but they also have to add an additional $6,000 or $7,000 just to walk away from it or trade it in at par on their next vehicle. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes a lot of car buyers are making these days, are buying their new cars, trucks, or SUVs and carrying that negative equity, rolling it over into the next vehicle, because getting in that habit is just a habit of failure. You're going to likely continue that trend of rollover upon rollover every 2 to 3, 4 years. And at the end of it, you spent so much more on rollover costs, as well as we can't forget about the interest charges against that. You're basically throwing so much money to the wind. It's absolutely ridiculous and embarrassing. But I want to show the kind of vehicle you should be buying if you only got $1,000, maybe $2,000, maybe even $3,000. You don't have to spend that 60 grand on that new truck. You can get a used truck like this for pennies on the dollar. See, part of the problem that a lot of people get into is they spend this hard-earned dollars on interest charges. We know interest rates are extraordinarily high, and the longer you take your loan term out for, the more you're paying in interest. And so there will be a time when I'm buying a brand new truck, but I'm trying to save as much, because I've said this before, there's sort of that rule of thumb. The minimum down would be 20% down for deposit. I mean, if you could put down 30, 40, 50% on your new vehicle, you're going to be dollars ahead, because likely, first of all, you're going to be taking off a lot less interest charges. You're going to be spending a lot less and spending that at the bank or the lending institution. Rather, you're going to be keeping more of that money in your pocket. Possibly, you might even save longer and put some of that money. Maybe you have that $20,000, $30,000. Maybe keep saving, but put that money in a high interest savings account. As a matter of fact, I looked at some of my investments here recently, and last year I was able to save, make about 12 to 14% on my investments. Well, that's exceeding the amount that I'd be spending on interest charges. So in my mind, I'm sort of killing two birds with one stone, if you will. I'm avoiding those interest charges, but I'm making money on an investment that's going to help me get ahead of the game, even with inflationary increases of, 3.5%, 4% year over year. I'm making more on my interest of my savings accounts. And so that's why I'm saving money. And for the time being, I will be buying a new vehicle at some point, but I just don't want to rush into it, because the higher amount you put down, the better off you're going to be. That's ultimately going to be the game. But until I have enough money that I'm able to save at least 25 to 30% down, keep my payments down to a relatively small amount, and keep it under 2 to 3 years, because I don't want to spend making car payments more than 2 or 3 years, because any more than that is just not really that responsible, and it's just a waste of money. You're making big payments for a long period of time, and that's how people get into negative equity. So I want to avoid that. But what I am doing is driving this $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 truck. Now I bought this vehicle off a family member. I was able to get a great deal. But the bottom line is, I was looking at the classifieds, and a lot of these older trucks do exist, a lot of older cars. They maybe don't have the new tech. They don't have the big screens. I mean, let's just take a look in here, for example, should we? Let's take a look. See, you don't have the big screens, but you're not worried about that big screen flaking out when it's minus 30. You don't have that. Hey, I even have a CD player right there. That's fun. But look, I got these cool white gauges. They look pretty tacky, or at least they did at the time. This seat doesn't have power, but the driver's seat does, because this is an SLT. You got power windows, power locks. I've got 4 doors, room for 6 people in this vehicle. And guess what? Tow rating of, I don't know, 9 or 10,000 pounds, whatever it is. I can do everything these new trucks can do. Now here's the thing, you buy a $1,000 truck like this, okay, it's not going to be perfect. And this is a realization that a lot of people, just come to, that even though it's a used vehicle that will take some maintenance, it still saves me a ton of money. Because yes, this is what more people are coming to the realization, that it's okay to spend a little bit of money on maintenance, a little bit of the repairs. They're going to happen, they're going to come. I mean, even if I had to spend some money and put some new tires on here, okay, so I'm going to spend $1,000. $1,000 for a new set of skins. Okay, that's one truck payment. Okay, next month, maybe I got to do a set of brakes all the way around. That's 2 truck payments. And then maybe the next month, I got to do some front end work because it's getting clunky and loose. That's 3 truck payments. Okay, now what do you do with the rest of the payments for the rest of the year? That's money in the bank. So you can take a vehicle that's maybe not perfect, maybe it has a few dents and scratches, maybe it has, needs a little bit of minor work, but because it's the older technology, a lot of these older vehicles, remember, some of these drastic changes started happening in 2017, 2018 with bigger screens, more tech, smaller turbo direct injected engines. Rather, if you go back a little bit older than that, this one here is 2003. But you could even go 10 years newer and you're still kind of old school. And those old school vehicles, you can fix a lot of that yourself. And that's a big reason why buying a $1,000 or $2,000 truck like this represents a great deal. So driving an older vehicle like this just seems to make so much more sense these days. Now, like I said, I will probably be buying a newer vehicle, because not everybody wants to drive beaters all their life, but sometimes it just makes sense. Maybe it's an interim vehicle. Maybe it's a vehicle that you can use as a second vehicle. Maybe you just want to do a little hobby work. You need something to tow some little bit of weight from time to time, but maybe that's not your daily use. It's nice to even have these older vehicles around for that. Something that runs, that's kind of reliable. Maybe use it for now. Once you save up enough money, then you can relegate this to just the towing duty, just for those small little tasks. But these older vehicles were so simple. I could do a lot of this maintenance myself. Air filters, fuel filters, I've done oil and filter changes here. Coolant, I've done flushes, radiators, I've done myself. A lot of this maintenance you can do yourself. I've done water pumps in this vehicle. I've done a water pump, thermostat, serpentine belt, battery change. I've done a lot of basic maintenance on this vehicle. And you could do it for pennies on the dollar. See, that's the catch. A lot of modern day vehicles are now very technical, and it needs a much more advanced set of diagnostic equipment and some of those seasoned techs that actually know how to fix your cars. Again, I'm not saying don't buy a new vehicle. I'm saying I love new vehicles and I want to buy one at some point, but I also don't want to throw my money away to the bank and give all my money at a 5 or 7 or 9% interest rate to the bank for 84 months and have that $60,000 truck end up costing me $84,000. That's the last thing I want to do. I'd much rather keep that money in the bank. So I'm going to reinvest some of the savings, and when I'm ready, I'll come back later with a much higher deposit and set up a much shorter loan term. And so that's why, for example, an older vehicle like this, doesn't matter if it's an old Ram, if you need an old truck. I've seen some of the old Toyota trucks with the 4.7, absolutely bulletproof. The old Tundras with the 5.7, bulletproof. You can get some great old Chevy trucks, some cool old Ford trucks. And if you go back 10, 15 years, you're gonna find a lot of good old trucks that just keep running. Cars, same thing. Look for those old Camrys with 250,000 kilometers, has the old V6. That thing will run for another 250,000 kilometers. Corollas, Honda Civics, and Accords. I mean, if you want cars or you want trucks, you can do it. And there's lots of those $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 cars all over the classifieds. A lot of people are tired of driving that. They justify to themselves that they want to buy something new because they deserved it, they've earned it, they work really hard, therefore they're going to buy and splurge and treat themselves. And that's cool, and that's great, because we all need to have those things that kind of get us excited. I mean, you know, like they say, if you don't take that second look back at that vehicle, you bought the wrong vehicle. So there will be a time where you enjoy driving something new. It's fun having that. But again, the message here is you can buy something older and cheaper for cheap, like almost pennies on the dollar. And whether it's permanent or whether it's part-time or whether it's just to get you through until you save a little bit more, to me, buying an older truck like this is the perfect way to go. In many ways. Another reason is, again, I can not just do my own repairs, but when things fail, I'm not dealing with a headlight assembly that's going to cost me $4,000 like on a Mercedes. Rather, all I have to do is change these bulbs, and I can go to the auto wrecker if this thing ever gets broken, and I could pick up this whole housing for $80. I've seen this. Or, you know, if this grill goes out, maybe a bird smashes. I know my old man had an old Ram, and a bird went right through the grill, took out everything. Well, the grill, you could find those at the wreckers for probably $10, you know. And you go around here and there's so many cheap parts that are easy to install and do yourself, and it just makes so much sense buying an older vehicle like this that virtually costs next to nothing. Because the more money that you don't spend on interest charges on your new vehicle, the less likely you're going to be one of those statistics of repossessions, and the more likely you're going to be able to save a little bit of extra money and put that money in the bank for those things that you like to do, like travel, maybe early retirement. Maybe you can buy that new boat instead. You know what? Maybe get a little extra life out of your truck, but now you can buy that boat this year that you wanted to go fishing with, and maybe you want to spend a little bit more time on the lake with your grandson or your son and daughter, or maybe there's just some people you just want to hang around with and you can take on a new hobby. These sometimes will enable that by allowing you to save some money. And that's why I see the value proposition isn't about driving old cars. It's about what it allows you to do with that extra money by driving these old cars. So you can either be car poor or you can enjoy life. I mean, that's a decision a lot of people are making, and it's more and more as we're seeing more repossessions. The talk about this car bubble is bursting keeps going on, but we've yet to see anything burst. We know OEMs are struggling with the sales in some cases, and yet these vehicles are selling. I was just over at a GM dealer here earlier this morning, and I saw them just unloading more and more trucks. Trucks are coming in, unloading new trucks for their lot. These trucks are selling. Like, clearly sales are down and they're up and they're down, but it's more a spin-off, a derivative of what we're seeing with some of these tariffs and the increased costs of sticker prices on some of these vehicles. We know OEMs like a Porsche, they just cranked up their price on their base price on their 911. Literally, they just upped their price early this year, and now another 10 grand here this last month to say the new sticker, revised sticker price of the 2026 911 just went up 10 grand to $130,000. So what we're starting to see is Volkswagen and Porsche and some of those vehicles that are coming from overseas, especially the European vehicles, are getting these increased prices. So vehicle prices are not going to go down. Never. So all you can do is put yourself in a position where either you continue driving old beaters, which I'm doing for now because I like to drive a new vehicle and probably buy something newer at some point, but just use that as an opportunity to just save up and then buy the vehicle of your dreams, because we know, in fact, that most people just don't have the money these days. You know, repossession rates are up. People don't have the emergency funds, and with an average household income of about $70,000 or $80,000 in the US, of course, that only leaves about 50 grand. And when you think about the cost of an average vehicle these days, or average truck, being anywhere from $50,000 all the way up to $110,000, that's a big chunk. That's a big commitment to pay for that new vehicle. So putting money aside for a rainy day is always good. Put a little money in the bank first, then put some savings away. If you can, reinvest, earn a little bit of interest, and then come at the dealership when you're ready to buy and you have a significant portion available as a down payment. Then it's time to buy. Till then, buy yourself a great old $1,000 truck like this and you'll be set for years.